Have you ever wondered how we ended up in a world so full of information yet seemingly devoid of truth? A paradox, isn't it? Today we live in an era of knowledge, of technological marvels and ceaseless information. Yet we find ourselves adrift in a sea of uncertainty, lost in a labyrinth of untruths. We have become chasers of myths and worshippers of idols, forgetting the word of the Almighty. We've built towers of Babel in the form of social networks and search engines, thinking we've become gods of knowledge. But in reality, we've lost sight of the beacon of truth that once guided us. We think we've advanced, but in truth, we've drifted. We've not grown closer to wisdom, but further from the Creator. This is the world we live in, a world where the word of the Almighty has been replaced by the word of man, where the divine is disregarded for the worldly, and where the pursuit of truth has been overshadowed by the pursuit of fleeting pleasures. Our society is a mirror reflecting a distorted image, a world turned upside down where right seems wrong and wrong seems right. But how did we get here? How did we stray so far from the truth? To answer these questions, we need to go back to the beginning, back to a time when the word of the Almighty was central to our lives. Welcome to our series, Lost Truths. Over the next few episodes, we will explore how mankind has been misled, how the lessons of the past have been twisted, and how the word of the Almighty is the only truth we must return to. We will trace our steps back through the annals of history, unearthing the roots of our collective drift and revealing the path back to the Creator. So, let's dive into the past and uncover how mankind has been misled and how we've drifted away from the Creator. Let's embark on a journey of discovery, a journey into the heart of truth and the soul of mankind. Let's explore a world without truth. Once upon a time, the Creator's word was the center of life. Faith was the heart of every society. A glance at history presents a vivid picture of societies where divine law was the cornerstone of existence. Whether through prophets, scriptures, or oral traditions, the word of the Almighty was revered, respected, and followed. Consider the Israelites who received the guiding light of Torah, embracing its teachings and shaping their lives around it. Or the early Christians, who lived by the teachings of the gospel, applying its wisdom to their daily lives. We see a similar pattern with the ancient Muslims who meticulously preserved the Quran and Hadiths, considering them the ultimate source of guidance and law. These communities knew the source of wisdom. It wasn't in the material possessions they had, or the power they wielded, but in the divine instruction they received. Life's essentials, from agriculture and medicine to governance, were all tied to this divine wisdom. They understood that their prosperity was intrinsically linked to their alignment with the Almighty's laws. Even when they erred, they recognized their mistakes as rebellion against the Creator. They acknowledged their transgressions, sought forgiveness, and strived to realign themselves with His divine laws. This humility, this acceptance of divine authority, was the bedrock of their lives. But as these communities prospered, a subtle shift began to occur. With prosperity came pride. As people amassed wealth and power, they began to value their material possessions more than the word of the Almighty. They started to drift away from their spiritual roots, replacing divine wisdom with worldly desires. The center began to shift, and with it the very fabric of these societies. Remember, this drift was not due to any change in the Almighty's word. The Almighty's word remained constant, unchanging. The drift occurred because humanity chose to value the temporal over the eternal, the material over the spiritual. But as prosperity grew, so did pride, and humanity began to value their worldly possessions more than the word of the Almighty. With prosperity came the drift. Humanity started to turn away from the word of the Almighty. In the lap of luxury, pride began to eclipse humility. The allure of wealth, power, and possessions started to outweigh obedience to the Creator. Take the ancient Israelites, for instance. They turned to golden calves, despite witnessing miracles that defied all earthly logic. This drift didn't stop at materialism. False teachings began to creep into the fabric of society. Paganism, idol worship, and myths found their way into the heart of truth. Prophets warned against these distortions, but their words fell on deaf ears. People began to prefer convenience over commitment, the easy path over the righteous one. As centuries rolled on, the drift grew stronger. The era of enlightenment dawned, and humanity began to trust reason over revelation. Science and philosophy ascended to the throne, often sidelining the Creator. This shift led to a new paradigm. Knowledge about how things work began to overshadow wisdom about why things exist. In the modern era, this drift took on a new form. New interpretations of Scripture emerged, twisting the divine word to suit lifestyles, ideologies, and political agendas. The prosperity gospel, for instance, reduced faith to a mere transaction for wealth. Alien myths replaced the Almighty with extraterrestrial creators. The drift was no longer subtle. It was bold and blatant. Yet let us remember the drift didn't happen because the Almighty left us. No, far from it. The Almighty has always been there, constant and unwavering. It was we who turned away. We chose to forget Him, to ignore His word. We chose to follow our own paths, to create our own truths. And so the drift began. Not a physical drift, but a spiritual one. A drift away from the Creator, away from truth, away from wisdom. It was a drift that would change the course of humanity forever. The drift happened not because the Almighty left us, but because we chose to forget Him. The drift was not without consequences. Without the Word as anchor, truth became relative. A society unmoored from the divine guidance finds itself adrift in an ocean of contradictions. One person claims to find truth in the stars, another in a crystal's shimmer, still another in the cold equations of a universe without a creator. This is the marketplace of truths, a cacophony of beliefs, all contradicting, all vying for attention. As the divine was pushed aside, history was rewritten. The pyramids, once a testament to human ingenuity under divine inspiration, are now credited to alien architects. Our ancestors, the same ones who charted the stars and mastered the art of healing, are reduced to mere spectators of extraterrestrial prowess. And the prophets, those who carried the word of the Almighty, are dismissed as mythical figures, their miracles relegated to the realm of legends. And what of our society, you may ask? It mirrors the downfall of civilizations long past. Babylon, Rome, Sodom all fell into decay after turning their backs on the Creator. Today we see the same signs. Moral decay is rampant, wars plague our world, greed is celebrated, and families, the bedrock of any society, are crumbling. This is not the sign of a society that is progressing, but one that is spiraling into spiritual bankruptcy. The drift from the Creator's word has left us in a world rife with confusion and instability. We've traded divine wisdom for human knowledge, and in doing so, we've lost our way. But this does not have to be the end of our story. There is a path back to the Almighty, a path that begins with acknowledging the consequences of our drift. Just as ancient societies fell, so too does our world become unstable when we reject the Creator. But all hope is not lost. The word is not forgotten, it has only been ignored. There is a way back, a path that leads us home to the Creator. Let's explore how we can retrace our steps and return to the source of all wisdom. The first step is prayer. It's the lifeline, the direct channel to the Almighty, a conversation that revives the connection that was lost. It's not about asking for miracles or bargains. It's about seeking understanding, guidance, and strength. It's about acknowledging our limitations and recognizing the infinite wisdom of the Creator. Next, we have the Scripture. It's not a book to be read with our eyes, but with our hearts. It's not to be twisted to fit our convenience, but to be understood in its original intent. Reading the Scripture with sincerity means seeking the truth in its words, not the comfort of familiar interpretations. Community plays a crucial role in our journey back. Surrounding ourselves with truth seekers, those who yearn for wisdom and not just knowledge, can guide our steps and keep us from straying. They are the companions who remind us of the Creator when we forget, who inspire us to strive for better when we falter. Finally, obedience is the key that opens the door to wisdom. It's not a blind following, but a conscious choice to live out the Almighty's commands in our daily lives. It's about aligning our actions with the divine laws, not out of fear, but out of love and respect for the Creator. Returning to the Creator is not a one-time event, but a lifelong journey. It's about constantly seeking, questioning, and growing. It's about realizing that the truth we've been searching for has been with us all along, in the Word of the Almighty. If you're intrigued by the unconventional, eager to challenge historical norms, and ready to explore the charted but with a different lens, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time.